At some point, we are really going to have to question this Labour government that Keir Starmer's running, and maybe the whole of the Labour Party, when we have suspended Labour councillor Ricky Jones facing trial later this year for encouraging violent disorder. Keir Starmer's already had one minister resign because she had a fraud conviction. They've now had 11 Labour councillors suspended over offensive WhatsApp messages. One of their policies, such as the VAT on school fees, is now going to cost over £8,000 to the taxpayer because the local authorities can't find school places for those children. And to top all of that off, the business secretary is now accused of acting as a solicitor when he was not in fact a solicitor, which, if that's the case, would be a criminal offence. So I'll talk about a few of those in this video, but first of all, you know the drill. If you're not subscribed yet, please do that. About half of you don't, and I'd really like it if you did. That helps my channel grow, and it helps YouTube spread my channel to a wider audience. So where do we start? Let's start with the VAT on school fees, and I'll come back to the business secretary later in the video. Please stick around for that. But I hate to say I told you so, but in many cases, this is going to cost the taxpayer more money than they ever could have hoped to raise. So in one such case that is brought up here, and some people, bless them, in the comments don't actually read the article, so they don't really understand what's going on, but here's what's going on. This one lady gives her perspective for her daughter and says, Labour forced my daughter out of private school, and now taxpayers foot the £8,000 bill for taxis. That's it in a nutshell. That's exactly what's happening. So just to summarise that a little bit, because they've added VAT to the school fees, they can now no longer afford them, or choose not to afford them. Because as it says in this article here, which I'll link below, the fees went up with the 20% by £3,270, which parents could no longer afford. Now, even if they could afford it, that's somewhat irrelevant. It's still a choice. You see, many of these parents that choose to save money, work double jobs and everything else to send their children to private schools, they choose to do that. And so if Labour puts VAT on the school fees, which they have, these same parents have the same choice not to send their children to those private schools and not pay the additional £3,270 at this one particular school for each and every child. So obviously, if you have 3 children, that's just shy of £10,000 a year. So whilst there's no obligation on those parents to pay those fees if they withdraw the child from the private school, there is an obligation on the local authority to ensure that there's sufficient schooling in the area for every child in the area. And if there isn't, and they haven't managed to do that, they are in breach of their statutory duty to do so. So, in other words, they then have to find an alternative. And in that case, they are now spending £8,000 a year on those taxi fees, or £8,199 a year on taxis, to send her to the school 25 miles away. This is a failed policy if ever I've seen one. And I'm going to borrow this infographic here, which contrasts to what Bridget Phillipson has said, which is that these schools are somehow a leech on society, which I really don't understand, but this contradicts it quite starkly. This one independent school alone contributes £82.5 million to the UK GDP, £40.3 million to Mendip GDP, 2,014 jobs, 8,000 children and public have attended events at this independent school. It's issued £5.9 million in bursaries and scholarships. 500 primary children have attended the league cross country. They pay £21.1 million in tax to HMRC, and these numbers go on, raising money for charity and all sorts of good things. Now, why on earth would a self-respecting society then take independent schools like that and slap them with a 20% VAT bill on top of their education, so that it quite literally forces some of these children out 25 odd miles away to another school that then the taxpayer has to foot the bill for? That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Moving on to the suspended Labour councillors, you really couldn't make this up. They're all part of this WhatsApp group sending and exchanging offensive messages. Now, there's a difference between exchanging a bit of a joke with a friend or your brother or whomever, but sending them in a group of councillors is only going to end one way. Someone's going to leak them because someone objects, and then a whole bunch of them are going to end up suspended, as is the case here. Now, 11 councillors in Greater Manchester. Now, how far does this spread, really? Because this is one group of WhatsApp councillors in Greater Manchester. let alone other parts of the country, this might prompt others to come forward and share their views on these private messages, or so-called private messages that have been sent. So apparently this group has already led to 2 Labour MPs being suspended in the region. The MP for Gorton and Denton, Andrew Gwynn, was suspended on Saturday, admitting that he'd made badly misjudged comments. He was also sacked as a health minister. Burnley MP Oliver Ryan was then suspended on Monday, saying that he'd made comments which he deeply regrets. And then the list goes on. The BBC reports that the following councillors are suspended from Labour. Councillor Claire Reid, Jack Naylor, George Newton, Vincent Ritchie, Charlotte Martin, etc. 11 councillors, all from the same area, all from the same group. All of this going on, or so they thought, in private until somebody blew the whistle and let everybody else know what kind of messages they were sending, and that was not in line with the policies of the Labour Party. But is it just that they came to light? I mean, this might be going on all over the country, so this may well hint others to come forward if they've exchanged those messages and they object to them, because after all, we should protect whistleblowers when they call out wrongdoing, and this is wrongdoing if ever you've seen it, whether they call it badly misjudged, comments that they deeply regret, or otherwise. It's something that really reflects how they really think. But now we come to the big sting of the day: Jonathan Reynolds being accused of what would ordinarily be considered a crime, which, as Robert Jenrick puts it, as former Director of Public Prosecutions, Keir Starmer should recognise criminal conduct when he sees it. More about that in a moment, don't go away. On another note for a moment, let me ask you this. Would you allow a complete stranger to access your laptop whilst your browser is logged into your email and your banking and perhaps other apps? Well, of course not. However, let me explain this. When you log into those things, your browser creates what we call a cookie. It's a small file saving all of the login and the authentication data for you to log into your email, your banking, etc. Now, if someone got hold of that cookie, they can pretend to be your browser, and they will take over that session, as we call it, that is logged into all of those things on your browser, and that is called session hijacking. I just read about some YouTubers that lost their entire YouTube accounts with hundreds of thousands of subscribers to one of these session hijacking. And that is where a partner to my channel, NordVPN, comes in. Because with NordVPN, when you access websites like this or try to download files that contain these hacking malicious softwares that try to access these session cookies and IDs, they try to take over your session, but NordVPN prevents you from doing so. It will flag up malicious websites, malicious downloads, and protect your computer from being hijacked so that they don't get access to your email, your banking, and any other app that you are logged into. And it's not just the active login sessions that these hackers can get hold of either. It's all of your information, including all of the authentication and login details, your name, email, city, password, address, phone numbers, gender, birthdays, all the sort of information that they can then use to steal your identity. NordVPN also comes along with a dark web monitor, that is monitoring the internet for your data that might have been leaked anywhere. They don't keep any logs and they've been independently audited a number of times. And of course, you can install NordVPN on all of your devices. And of course, as a partner to my channel, I get you a fantastic discount using the code BBB, which is the nickname you gave me. It's on screen right now. That gives you an additional 4 months extra free on top of the discounts that they already do, and a 30-day money-back guarantee. So just use the code BBB at the checkout and it will give you 4 months extra free, and you'll have the peace of mind knowing that when you next click a link, your email, your bank and everything else are not at risk. So check out NordVPN today, linked below for that peace of mind. So back to Jonathan Reynolds, and as Robert Jenrick said, there's always a tweet. He quote posts here, Jonathan Reynolds saying, though further to that last tweet, personally, I find being an MP better for work-life balance than being a solicitor and a counsellor. So you can infer from that he's saying that he was a solicitor, he was working as a solicitor. But that raises the question, was he really working as a solicitor? Now, just so you know, when I see quotes like that, I do go back and check. So this is Jonathan Reynolds' account. It's definitely sent from his account. It would be a tweet by then in 2011. And that's where he says that tweet right there. So now that raises the question, was he really a solicitor? Now there's, just pausing for a second, there's whether you're a solicitor or a barrister, there are different routes. I don't fully understand the solicitor route because obviously I'm not a solicitor. I've never gone to qualify as a solicitor, but there are different routes, but there's several stages to it and you have to comply with all those stages. As a barrister, I had to have a law degree, then went to bar school. Actually, I did a master's at the same time. And then you do pupillage and, in between, once you've qualified, you call to the bar, then you do pupillage, and then then you can practice as a barrister. But if you qualify but you don't do pupillage, you are an unregistered barrister. So you cannot hold yourself out as a barrister, you cannot offer services as a barrister, and to do so would still be a criminal offence, even if you're qualified as a barrister but not authorised to practice as a barrister. Hopefully that makes sense. So the same, I think, applies very broadly to solicitors. You cannot hold yourself out as a solicitor unless, in fact, you are a solicitor on the roll of solicitors. And someone screenshotted the SRA website here, which quite rightly says it's a criminal offence for someone to call themselves a solicitor or act as a solicitor if they're not on the roll of solicitors. This could be pretending to be a solicitor, for example, at court, but may also include describing themselves as a solicitor on their social media profiles. Now, this is not as uncommon as you might think. I've seen documents, in fact, as a law firm, we've received documents that there's been a name at the bottom, and it's fairly routine for us, so it certainly is for me because I like to be thorough. We always check whether the person is a solicitor or not. And in more than one case, we've found that someone is signing court documents. They are not a solicitor, they're not a barrister. And point of trivia, if you're a barrister and you want to do certain court documents called litigation, you have to be authorised to conduct litigation. I'm authorised to conduct litigation, but most barristers are not. My firm is also authorised to conduct litigation. Solicitors by default are authorised to conduct litigation because it's normally solicitors that do the litigation, and it's not normally barristers that do litigation. We do advocacy and advice and representation and so on. So there's a whole few things going on there. And so even the conduct of litigation itself would be an offence under the Legal Services Act if you are carrying out a reserved legal activity without being qualified and authorised to do so. And there is a difference. You can be qualified but not authorised to do so. So if you are holding yourself out as a solicitor, and that includes putting it on your social media profiles, if you're not, then that would be a criminal offence. Likewise, barrister. I've had clients of mine who've come for advice from me, and the first bit of my advice to them has been, you probably have a claim against this individual because this individual is not a barrister. They gave you advice that made it look like they were a barrister, and you believe they were a barrister, and therefore that could amount to an offence, and that the advice was negligent, as it happens. And so I've had to tell them in that situation that they have an alternative cause of action, and it's my duty to do that as a barrister, to advise them on that. So that raises this question here. Now, the Telegraph reports here that Jonathan Reynolds has been accused of fabricating his CV. Sounds familiar? After it emerged that he repeatedly described himself as a solicitor despite never qualifying. It says he previously claimed on his website that he worked as a solicitor in Manchester branch of the law firm Addleshaw Goddard before becoming an MP. He also told the Commons in 2014 that he worked as a solicitor in Manchester city centre before switching careers. In fact, he didn't qualify for the title because he never finished his training contract, the Telegraph reports, having quit the course in 2010 to run for Parliament. This means he was never added to the official role of solicitors, regulated by the SRA, a requirement to legally practice in England and Wales. It says he also previously stated in his LinkedIn profile that he was also simultaneously a solicitor and a trainee solicitor between 2009 and 2010, according to screenshots obtained by Guido Fawkes, reported the discrepancies. So this is yet another scandal. This is the business secretary for the United Kingdom. So we have question marks over Rachel Reeves' CV, who's running the economy. We have question marks over whether the business secretary has wrongly and falsely claimed that he was a solicitor when he wasn't, which would ordinarily be a criminal offence if that's the case. Obviously no finding of facts made in this video. These are reports and I'm reporting on the reports. How very meta. So reportedly, this is an allegation that he's committed a criminal offence by holding out as a solicitor, if in fact he did and if in fact he wasn't. And I know that he did because at least in the post that he did himself, he's referred to being a solicitor. This tweet by itself may not qualify as holding out because he's referring to past tense of being a solicitor. But if you go back far enough, you may well find that he did exactly that. And that's possibly what they're referring to. So, as I say, at the outset of this video, I could find no other way to open it. We really do have to question this Labour government and the Labour Party in general. If they've got literally dozens of councillors being suspended over their messages, we have MPs being suspended over those messages. We've had an MP resign because there was a conviction in the past, and now we've got question marks over CVs on people holding top positions in government. You really couldn't make this up, but we don't have to, because this is what's being reported. And I find it really bizarre. And I've never said that I want to get into politics. In fact, I've always said the opposite. I've always said I don't want to get into politics, but some people have said it's people like me that should get into politics because I don't like the politics of things. I just like things to run normally. Just like, for example, my yesterday filler video about my story with EE. I'm not sour about people being a little bit cocky and arrogant on the chat. I actually found it quite entertaining. But I did go back as an update to that story. I did go back and I spoke to them on the phone. And I will shout out Daryl. He was absolutely fantastic. If you need great service with someone absolutely on the ball, knows what he's doing, gives you a good deal, explains it exactly as it is, which is absolutely fine, by the way. If they tell me this is what you get and you pay for it, I'm perfectly happy with that. It's when I'm misled into thinking that I'm getting something that I'm not. That's when I object. But other than that, EE, so far, fantastic. If the signal's as good as the service, I will be good. So I'll keep you posted, but so far, so good. So let me know what you think about any of that in the comments. Failed policies and failed politicians, it would seem, in many respects. But let me know what you think. Do like the video and subscribe. That helps my channel grow. I'm keeping it real. And as always, thank you for watching.